Hello everyone, thank you so much for watching my video, especially to my viewers and subscribers in Asian countries like India, Vietnam, Uzbekistan, and Saudi Arabia. I hope that my videos are beneficial in your IELTS preparation. Today, I'm going to be sharing the sample answers I've made for Part 1 topics, and they are public gardens and parks and science. I made 2 sample answers for each question so that you can have more ideas and more useful expressions as well. Please do some shadowing or read along with me, okay? Let's begin. Would you like to play in a public garden or park? Well, most of the time, I prefer going to parks, mainly because it's more spacious and I can see a lot of dogs walking or playing with their owners. In my area, there's a park nearby and it's very refreshing because there are so many trees and it also has a playground for kids. Well, for the most part, I'm more inclined to go to public garden since I'm a plant lover. Seeing a variety of plants, especially ornamental plants like orchids and cactus, fascinate me. So if you prefer going to public park, you can use the first sample answer and you can use these ideas. Parks are more spacious, right? And it's refreshing and it also has a playground for kids. Now, instead of saying most of the time, you can also say for the most part. Example, what have you been doing during this pandemic? Instead of saying most of the time I just stay at home. So you can say, well, for the most part I just stayed at home. Okay? Instead of saying I prefer, you can say I am more inclined to. Alright? Okay. Next question. What do you like to do when visiting a park? Well, just like what I said a while ago, I enjoy watching the dogs. But aside from that, I also work out since the park in my area is spacious. Sometimes I just enjoy the surroundings since the air is fresh because of the trees. Well, most of the time I just take a stroll and do some sightseeing. I notice that there's always a lot of things going on in parks, like some people are jogging, playing with their kids, or having a picnic. I guess it's better to see different happenings outside rather than being stuck at home. Okay, let's continue. How have parks changed today compared to the time when you were a kid? Well, as far as I know, parks have changed tremendously. Because in the past, parks were quite simple. However, nowadays, it's more sophisticated. What I'm trying to say is there are more amenities like exercise equipment, water fountain, and they even have Wi-Fi spots. If the question is asking you about changes, so you can use this expression, it changed tremendously. This is a beautiful collocation, right? If you want to give more details to your previous answer, to your previous sentence, you can use this expression. What I'm trying to say is. Alright? Next, to be honest, I feel like no significant changes happened to parks. When I was young, I remember seeing a bunch of plants, and I think they're still the same. I think the only difference is that there are few people visiting parks nowadays, and it's probably because of the pandemic and people are scared to go out. Alright, so this is another good expression, significant changes. Seeing a bunch of plants. Instead of saying seeing many plants, you can say bunch. A bunch of plants. Alright? Let's continue. Would you prefer to play in a personal garden or public garden? Instead of saying I prefer, you can say, well, I am more inclined to play in a private garden because I can have my own privacy and it's obviously less crowded. There's a private garden in my area and although I have to pay for the entrance fee, it's completely fine because it's less noisy and I can really enjoy the nature there. Next sample answer. I think I would choose public gardens because I love seeing the greens. Although I don't have green thumb, I really appreciate seeing different kinds of plants. Plus, public gardens are usually maintained by the government. That's why I think it has more attractive plants. So instead of saying plants, you can use greens. Now this is an idiomatic expression, green thumb. Green thumb is an idiom which means your ability to grow plants well. Example, my friend has a green thumb because every time she plants flowers or veggies, they would always grow. Alright, so if you have a green thumb, meaning you're good at planting. Alright, let's move on. Let's talk about science this time. Do you like science? To tell you the truth, I'm not keen on science. Mainly because every time I take science tests, my scores are always low. On top of that, I hate memorizing a lot of scientific terminologies. So instead of saying I dislike science, I don't like science, try to use this expression instead. I'm not keen on. Now, instead of saying also, try to say on top of that. Alright? Next sample answer. Yes, absolutely. I love science, especially geology. I think this branch of science is so interesting because I can learn about the Earth's geological structures like volcanoes and mountains. I've always been fascinated with these kinds of things. That's why I love science. Alright, let's continue. When did you start to learn about science? Well, I guess I started learning about science in primary school. At that time, I excelled in science because back then, science concepts were easier. These days, it has become more complicated and scientific terminologies are so difficult to memorize. Okay, next. As far as I can recall, I began learning about science when I was in kindergarten. However, things were quite easy during that time, since I only have to learn about the parts of the body and some animals. So since you're talking about the past, try to use this expression as far as I can recall. Even if you clearly remember it, even if you can completely recall it. Why? You just want to get a good score on vocabulary. Alright? Remember, try to use a wide range of connectives as well. Like however, because, meanwhile, whereas. Alright, so those are examples of connectives. Let's continue. Which science subject is interesting to you? Well, as I was saying, I'm not fond of science. But if there's one science subject that I like, I think it would have to be astronomy. I've always been fascinated with the solar system, stars and galaxies because I think they're simply amazing. Next, I think it would have to be chemistry. When I was in university, my classmates and I did a lot of experiments in school's laboratory and I really had a blast during that time because we made banana wine, soaps, and mayonnaise. So instead of saying, well, the interesting science subject for me is, so that's quite simple. You just repeated the words in the question. You will get a low score on vocabulary. Try to sound natural. Try to begin your answer with this. I think it would have to be. Alright? Now this is an idiomatic expression. Had a blast. What does it mean? I had fun. The meaning is very simple. Try to use idioms in your answers because it will boost your score. Technically speaking, it's required by IELTS. Okay? Now let's continue. What kinds of interesting things have you done with science? Well, I had an experiment with Mentos and Coca-Cola. I actually put a lot of Mentos inside a Coca-Cola bottle, then I closed the lid and waited for its explosion. It was kind of scary, but it was also fun at the same time. Next sample answer. I guess I did a bunch of interesting things with science, but the most memorable one was when my classmates and I opened the body of a frog. It was in our microbiology subject, and that experience was so terrifying and surprising at the same time because it was my first time to dissect a frog. Alright, so that would be all. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the day. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to comment down below. Thank you. Bye.